sometimes as the chair, you can disrupt the program. So I'm going to disrupt the program for a moment. We have a set of deans that are sitting at that table over there, and I'm going to ask that each one come up and say a little bit about their school so we can know who are the deans in the 2022 disruption, similar to what we did back in 1945. So I'm going to start with the one I think is the most seasoned dean over there, and that will be Donald Andrews from Southern University, Baton Rouge. Come on up, Donald.
Good morning. My name is Donald Andrews. I'm Dean of the College of Business at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And as you know, Louisiana hadn't been the most progressive state with respect to funding higher education. So when we talk about disruption and we talk about challenges, I think we all know what that's all about. You know, I used to say that at one time we were state supported, then we became state assisted, and now we're located in the state. So that tells you that we have to be entrepreneurial. In other words, you're talking about ICE in terms of innovation and creativity and entrepreneurship. I've been dean now for 24 and a half years. We're actually celebrating our 85th anniversary in terms of our school being started in 1937. I'm sorry that we weren't here for the 1945 program, but I'm here now, so I might be 75 years late, but which represents, I'm nearing that, as Ed May is saying, season, I'm nearing that 75th anniversary for myself. I'm 73 years old. But basically, in terms of the role and mission of our school at Southern University in Baton Rouge, we have about 900 students in our program. We have all sorts of opportunities. I always say to my students and to the parents that entrust their students to us that we run out of students before we run out of great opportunities. And I always say to the parents and to the students, if you put in the time, we as a college will get you where you need to be. Because we're not going to leave you behind. And I think that's what the role of HBCUs have always been. It's basically we're going to make a way for deserving students. And I've been in these organizations in terms of the HBCU Business Deans Roundtable. We've always looked to Clark Atlanta as a lead institution. I came to Southern University in 1967 as a student, and most of my professors had graduate degrees from Clark Atlanta. That's how significant Clark Atlanta has been. And we've got to find ways to continue that legacy. Now, in terms of leadership, that is central to change. So here we're talking about change theory. And so we have to look at the leadership. Is the leadership willing to change? And we all go through these exercises. And my campus is probably no different. We talk about a strategic plan. Well, in terms of a strategic plan, you also have to have a financial plan to go along with that strategic plan. And in order to be a leader, you have to be willing to accept chaos. Are we willing to accept chaos? In other words, we're probably good managers. We don't want to take on that risk. But if we're talking about leadership in the 21st century, you're going to have to be willing to take some risk. And that's something that higher education institutions have not been willing to do. So I think in answering what Provost Udoka was talking about in terms of disruption and in terms of change, I think we have to be willing more or less to take on some risk in terms of entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurship is about risk-taking. So I've probably gone off course because I'm used to lecturing for about 3 hours. So I told you, Ed didn't know what he was getting into when he asked me to come up here. But we have let me try to get back on course, but that's what I wanted to say about disruption. In other words, to be entrepreneurs, you have to recognize opportunity, you have to develop the teams, and you have to find the resources. And we have to create those resources. Booker T. Washington, when he started Tuskegee, I think the state of Alabama gave him $10,000 and said, don't come back, that's it. Go out there and create this institution that you're talking about. And so that is what I see as the epitome of entrepreneurship in higher education, because that institution still exists today. We have an MBA at Southern University in the College of Business. We have the only MBA at an HBCU in the state of Louisiana. I argued with the Board of Regents for almost 10 years to get that program because I thought it was needed. They said, well, you don't need it. They can go to LSU or they can go to UNO. And I say, you look at the statistics, for some reason they are not looking at the minority community. And there's a need for this institution to have an MBA program. And we say it's going to be an MBA program for working professionals. And so we've been quite successful at that. I guess we've graduated over 500 MBAs, and they've all gone out and been quite successful. We have our undergraduate program. We have accounting, we have finance, we have management, and we have marketing. We've seen great growth in supply chain and HR. Our accounting program has been on a downward trend, so if you can help me in that manner, I really would appreciate it, because we need more or less to maintain our accounting program. And as I said, we're entrepreneurs. We don't have a lot of funds, so basically I'm always trying to find ways to increase the number of scholarships that we can provide to our students. We had our first alum last year to give us $1 million. And we celebrated that, and I think he sort of incited others to give, so I have another alum that gave us $125,000 this year. And we're earmarking most of that for scholarships, because there's great competition out there for African American students. LSU more or less has realized that they can educate African American students, and I know you have Georgia State here as well, because they sometimes point out Georgia State as a model that they're using. And so I think we have to look at what's going on around the nation, Arizona State and various others that have been on the lead in terms of best practices, in terms of micro-credentials. We're bringing those in. We have the IBM Skills Academy. So we're bringing those things into our program. So we intend to be here. I don't know how much longer I'll be around, but whoever takes over after me, I'm hoping they will continue this tradition. So I really want to applaud you for this program. And the role that Clark Atlanta has played in terms of educating African Americans as far as business education is concerned. And I hate to say this, but we send most of our students out of state to Atlanta, to Houston, Dallas, and I'm hoping at some point New Orleans will wake up and be a better employer of our students. So thank you very much for this time.
Good morning. I'm Igwe Ude, and I'm the Dean of the College of Business and Public Administration at Southern University at New Orleans. So they are in Baton Rouge, we are in New Orleans. Everything he said is true, so I don't need to repeat that, because the situation they have is the situation we have. Fortunately for us, we couldn't be here in 1945, because we were not founded yet. We were not founded until 1956. And so we didn't actually start offering classes at Southern University campus until 1958. So the first graduate class was in 1963. So we couldn't be here. So I'm here to do two things. Number one, to celebrate the legacy that has really benefited us. On our campus, we have several faculty members who graduated from here, and they are some of the pillars of our academic programs. They got a solid education here that allowed them to make very, very great contribution in our program. So I celebrate that. Also, I have been probably to Clark Atlanta University for graduations more than any other school other than mine. because my friends, my family members, so many of them have graduated from this institution. So when we go to family reunion, you better not say something bad about Clark London because you're going to be in trouble. So I'm extremely, extremely proud of that. And I know from experience that those who graduated from this program are doing very, very well. So to me, that's a legacy that is something to be proud of. But I'm also here to learn, because we have great minds here. We have people who have done things that we're aspiring to do. So this is one of the reasons I'm here, to see what we can learn that we can take back to our campus to implement. Just like what Don has said, we have a program in business. We have two degree programs, undergraduate degree programs in business, a business administration program, and a computer information systems. We also have a master's program in computer information systems. Then we have a non-business degree program in public administration in our area. Unlike Don's program, our accounting concentration is doing very well. In fact, it's one of the fastest growing programs in our area. Our graduates, why you don't have a lot of graduates from Baton Rouge that are coming to New Orleans is because almost all our graduates are employed in New Orleans. Very few of them leave the area. They love the area, they love the culture, they love what's going on there. So they tend to have their jobs there, they have their career, they have their family. When they leave, they do come here because of the rivalry between the Falcons and the Saints. So I guess that's why they're coming here, to see what. So they usually don't go anywhere else. They usually come to Atlanta. So we have a lot of roots with here. Again, we are here. I'm here to learn, and I'm here to just benchmark against what is being done by this school. So I look forward to the program. Thank you.
Good morning, good morning. My name is Dr. Dorian Williams. I'm with Dillard University in New Orleans. It's a great honor to be here today, to so many great minds here, and some of the challenges that we've already heard about is what some of the things that we're experiencing at Dillard University for our students. To be here is to understand that a lot of our students are embarking on many different challenges, but in the midst of the change that's going on with COVID, some of the employer situations in which they're attracting our students, we're kind of losing some of the interpersonal skills of our students to be able to go out and be able to be effective communicators and also forefront of what they're learning in the classroom. So to be here to learn about those things, how we can change it in the College of Business at Dillard University. We do have a program in business administration. As some of the colleagues have said, in New Orleans, it's a different culture in which individuals are attracting our students, but also that we're sending our students out and being prepared. So I'm here to learn more about the success stories and the things that we can do at Dillard University to make our students better prepared, and also not only our students, but our faculty, to make sure that they're changing with the times, that employers, and then things that we can do to be more effective. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, and on behalf of Texas Southern University, Madam President Crippen Young and Madam Provost Lillian Post, I send my highest regard to you and wish this conference, this summit, a very good conference, and give us opportunity to learn and to educate the minority students. My name, David Yen, Y-E-N. I'm from Jesse H. Jones School of Business, Texas Southern University. I joined Texas Southern University 2019 because New York is too cold. I was originally the dean of State University of New York, but I'm from Taiwan. I like warm weather. I don't want to shovel snow. Every time Buffalo has snow, Syracuse has snow, or from Oklahoma, well, we have also a part of snow. I don't like to shovel the snow. So I decided to move to Texas Southern University, the great university in Texas. In my university, we have two departments. Department of Accounting and Finance, Department of Business Administration, 5 majors: accounting, finance, management, marketing, and also management information systems. Accounting, around 170 students. Finance, around 200 students. Marketing, going up, 270 majors. Management, the largest, around 520 majors. And management information system, we are developing currently 84 majors. We have 4 master programs: MBA, EMBA, Master of Science in Management Information Systems. And we just recently get approval of 5-year Master of Accounting program. So accounting students, they can take the graduate program in-house with 1 more year study, focus on auditing, compliance, and then get master's degree. And from 2019, TSU JHJ has successfully got 2 grants. We set up Future Banking Leadership Program. We got, so far, $4.5 million from Chase, JP Morgan, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Frost Bank, Amity Bank, and a number of local banks, including Texas Banker Association support. This is the reason our finance major increased by 35 more than accounting now. Hopefully, with 5-year accounting program, we can get accounting student, accounting major back, especially compliance and IT auditing is very important. Second grant we got, just like a Clark Atlanta, we are very fortunate to get a PNC Bank support, $2.5 million for 5 years. And we try to learn from Clark Atlanta, Morgan State, and Howard, plus TSU will be 4 centers to set up entrepreneurship center. We are looking forward to establish PNC Entrepreneurship Center in TSU. And since entrepreneurship is moving from 1.0, from original culture and social entrepreneurship to the 2nd generation, you need to learn marketing, you need to learn finance, you need to learn management, then move to the 3rd generation, 3.0. You need to have interdisciplinary entrepreneurship, construction management, and chemical analyst, or information system consulting, or insurance, or real estate. We also successfully get a Title III grant, so we set up simulation lab. It will be operating this fall. We get a HERF grant and set up, say, new marketing digital marketing lab. In other words, digital marketing and marketing analytic. That's one of our second concern, because we want to increase more marketing majors. And the third one, like I shared with you earlier, our MIS, we need to grow from 84 to 100 in order to be a meaningful major. So we get a HP grant, set up real-time processing. So with all that, I think TSU is ready to accomplish, say, President Griffin Young's wish to move from R2 to R1. One nice news is we passed the AACSB review this year. And we are moving forward. I come here to learn from Clark Atlanta because you have so many nice graduates. You have a well-rounded, say, education. We try to learn from you. And eventually, we will be one of the premier schools in Houston area. We want to compete with all Houston University, including UH. Thank you.
What he said. No. Charles Richardson, Alabama A&M. Been there about 3 months. We've got an entirely new administration, new president, new provost. I'm the new dean of the College of Business. We are fortunate to be in Huntsville, Alabama, and a lot of people haven't discovered it yet. But the analogy that I use is that Huntsville is not Alabama like Atlanta is not Georgia. We were the #1 voted destination in the country to live. And we've got a bunch of corporations, government agencies, et cetera, that for some reason I think is just, maybe it's timing, they're in love with us. Our career fair is sold out, people banging on the door to try to get into our students. So we've got the demand, what we've got to do is some program revision and updating, but all of that's underway, and I think we see a pretty bright future. Thanks.
Good morning, all. I'm Van Sapp. I'm here representing St. Augustine's University, Raleigh, North Carolina, founded in 1867. But I'm very familiar with Clark, Atlanta as well, graduating from Tuskegee and driving up 85. I graduated from Clark, Atlanta's MBA program with my classmate Steve Carnegie. In 1987, we're celebrating our 35th this year. So we've been advocates, and we've been part of the Clark Atlanta School of Business's endowment for the future. And Steve and I both have worked in industry. And there were opportunities that were afforded us because we went to Clark Atlanta. We toiled in the industry for years, and both of us are kind of paying it forward as we move back into to academia. I've been in academia all of 4.5 years. So part of what we're hoping to talk about in terms of disruption is the practical experience that's needed in our business schools for us to be ready for industry. Industry doesn't believe business schools, no matter where your schools are putting out students that are ready for industry. And we need to figure out how to go do that. Of course, we have a few ideas about that as well. St. Augustine's University is a very small school. There are about 1,100 students on campus. In the 4.5 years I've been there, I've grown the majors 42%, while the university has grown about 4%. So we've created a disruption in the School of Business, that there are a lot of people who want to be part of what we're trying to do in the mixture. You know, our hashtag for the students is "We practice what we teach." We've got people there who not only can teach business, but have been successful in business. And it's one of the ways we've been trying to break through all the competition in the area, as the Triangle has quite a few colleges and universities. So again, I am happy to be here to be part of this program with some colleagues from other schools, institutions. It's great to be home at Clark Atlanta as well. Thank you.
Always we have a couple students that don't want to come up. And I see two sitting at this table right here. I'm going to ask you to come up and say a word. Okay.
I guess I didn't realize. My apologies. So I'm Perry Lewis. I am representing Tennessee State University. We are extremely happy to be a part of this activity. And I guess, you know, Tennessee State University shares all of the opportunities and challenges that many other business schools here represent and have commented on. The thing I wanted to emphasize in regards our university and our participation in this event and others like it is the important role that our institutions play in the lives of our students and the students that we serve. We are all uniquely positioned to support our students and the role that they can play in you know, as they go forward in business and in supporting the economies that you know are our country's economy. And I'd like us to be, as we go forward, as we learn from one another today, and as we contribute in the ways that we can to the conversation and to innovation and to disruption, you know, and to all the important ways we think about continuing to not only be of service, but to lead in the ways that we lead. I'd like to remind us of, you know, of our importance. Some of us may be small. We're growing. We're trying to make our impact in the areas that we're in. But we're extremely important, and we're an extremely important part of the economy and the lives of the students whose parents have entrusted them to us. So thank you all. I look forward to getting to talking to you guys as we go forward today.
Good morning. My name is Yao Amponsan Edu. I am here on behalf of Morris Brown College. Our president is President Kevin James, and our provost is Dr. Anthony Johnson. I chair the Department of Business, and we are glad to be back. For about 2 decades or so, our institution went through the hard reset. We went through a financial disruptive situation, and we found our way to come back in the black. The Department of Business is the biggest department of 4 departments, and I'm personally excited to be back here in the AUC. Our sister school, Clark, has always been there. Thank you, Dr. Udoka, for sending the email for us to be here. And we are excited to be here. It's an undergraduate school for the moment. Part of our strategic plan, is to have a school of business in the next 5 to 6 years or so, to be accredited by ACBSP, and I believe there is a representative here. We are making plans towards that. We have bachelor's degrees in organizational management development, management leadership. We have global and applied leadership, and we have a BS in hospitality and management. We have certifications in business entrepreneurship, esports performance, and nonprofit management. So we are very, very happy to be here. We are born to be disruptive since we got our accreditation back in April 26th this year. And we are very, very serious about moving forward and being part of the education system, educating Atlanta's youth and Atlanta's young folks, as well as making sure that those who have been hit in the mouth are given the real true skills on how to get back up and stay on top. Thank you very much for being here.
I do want to thank all the folks that you've heard from the various institutions who did not know that they were going to be called upon, but I know that they were former professors and deans, and as Donald came up, I thought Donald was going to be the keynote speaker. So let's give them a round of applause again. Thank you so much. I was sort of technology challenged, and my son said that I had to have an Apple Watch, so they got me an Apple Watch. Then he said I had to upgrade my iPhone. I had an iPhone 8, and now I got a fancy new iPhone. And then they got me a Tesla. I drive a Tesla. So now I've moved into the 21st century. So as a 21st century person, I think I can now ask that we move into our, really the first session that talks about the future of business education. So I'm going to ask Dr. Washington if she can come forward and ask the panel members. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, but that's okay because my provost said we can innovate and disrupt. So I'm going to innovate and disrupt, and I'm going to ask the panel, and really appreciative of the panelists who have agreed to come in and talk to us a little bit about how they see the future of business education going forward. And we have some wonderful panelists, and I'm going to ask Dr. Washington to introduce them. So Dr. Talitha Washington, who is a disruptor here in the AU Center and is disrupting around technology and data analytics and really moving this whole complex, this whole AUC into the future of data-driven decision-making, where we have students that can go out and be real data analysts. So I welcome you, Dr. Washington, and you can introduce your fellow panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I guess.
Yeah, you can take seats here. Do all of you have bottles of water? If not, could someone bring a few bottles of water for the panelists to the front? So, Dr. Washington?
We're missing one. Here he comes with water. Oh, thank you. So good morning, it's great to be here. As he said, my name is Dr. Talitha Washington. I am the director of the Atlanta University Center Data Science Initiative. And as we all know, there's a lot of data in business when we are making business decisions and things of that nature. So it's an honor to be here with you all today, and I'm really looking forward to learning from my fellow panelists here about their thoughts about rankings, about the future of business education. What can we do in thinking about making our business programs stronger, both at the undergraduate, graduate level, and also more impactful, because we understand and know the value that HBCUs we bring to the business landscape, both in innovations and also our contribution to the workforce. So I'm looking forward to our panel. So without further ado, I just want to take a moment and just ask each person just to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about either their organization or where they're coming from. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's going to be a very good session. Been a little distracted this morning because I'm from Tampa, Florida, and there's the hurricane coming up the coast of Florida. And so I apologize if you saw me on my telephone as I'm getting lots of messages from the staff. But my name is Neil Bosland. I'm the Global Chief Operating and Financial Officer with AACSB. As I said, we are in Tampa. We have 2 additional offices. One is in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and that serves the Europe, Middle East, and Africa regions of the world. We have an office in Singapore that serves Asia Pacific. And in Tampa, we serve the Americas, both North and South America, as well as the Caribbean. I've been with AACSB for about 20 years, and I did notice that many of the speakers who came up and introduced themselves here this morning are from AACSB accredited institutions, and that's very happy to see that. And those who aren't, I hope to share some information with you today that will hopefully give you some opportunities to learn and think about the future of business education. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Paula Fontana, Interim President for the National Black MBA Association. For those of you who don't know us, our mission is to lead in the creation of educational, wealth building, and growth opportunities for Blacks throughout all stages of their careers, students, professionals, and entrepreneurs. So our membership begins as young as high school students, where we mentor them on a chapter-based model. We have over 40 chapters throughout the United States, and then we continue the relationship with undergraduates, graduates, experienced professionals, as well as entrepreneurs. Absolutely happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, okay. So I'm Bob Morse. I'm the Chief Data Strategist at U.S. News and World Report. Our office is in Washington, D.C. We were a weekly magazine. We've been in existence for like 75 years. The last actually print magazine was published in like 2009, 2010. The reason I'm bringing this up is now we're more or less an entirely digital platform. It's a very large website. My area is I'm in charge of all the academic rankings that U.S. News does, which I know we're going to be discussing, but to some degree, I know U.S. News also has, does rankings in hospitals and cars and hotels and travel, so it covers a lot of territory. I've been at U.S. News since 1976, so I've been there a very long time. I was more or less, I've been in charge of doing the rankings since the late 1980s, since 1987. So I've seen a lot of changes, and it's been an interesting conversation for me to listen to all the deans and academic officials talk about their institutions, because normally the rankings that we do are more or less all based on numbers, and we don't really, have an in-depth understanding about the schools themselves. So I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you all. And if y'all, it's okay, go first name, Talitha. Okay, because I can't, too much jet lag going on over here. Great, thank you. So Neil, we'll start with you. So we have the business accreditation standards with AACSB. How have you seen these standards evolved over time? And looking forward, how do you think they'll continue to evolve, especially as we're looking to either provide new innovations in our business programs and thinking about really meeting that unknown? How do we prepare our students? What sort of business innovations are needed and or required?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the accreditation standards were last updated just a few years ago in 2020. And those schools that are currently going through the accreditation process, either in their continuous improvement renewal or the initial accreditation process, are migrating now and transitioning to the 2020 standards. Those that haven't yet were using the 2013 standards. This new set of standards really revolutionized the the standards that we had from 2013. So we scaled down the number of standards, but it didn't mean that we were taking them and making them less comprehensive. So they're still quite comprehensive. But what we interjected in there are a number of new things that really are relevant to business education globally. And so, for example, our standards are mission-driven, and so a school establishes their mission and then ensures that their curriculum, their programming, their institution meets the objectives of the mission. So that's what enables schools globally to not be the same, but still are able to demonstrate high-quality education and high-quality curriculum. Some of the changes that were made in the more recent standards surround a number of societal and environmental issues. So for example, one of the things is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, which of course is a major issue globally at the moment. Now, of course, diversity means many different things globally, and so the AACSB standards are agile enough to fit within the environment in which the school operates. In addition, one of the things that we are really focusing on is societal impact. So what we've learned is that students, especially in today's age, are really thinking about the school that they attend, the employers that they may want to choose to go work for. They don't want to just go through a typical education that we may have done 20, 30 years ago. What they want to do is learn, but they also want to have practical experience through their learning experience, and they want to make a difference. So they want to work for an employer, or they want to go to a school that demonstrates that they make a difference in some way to society. And that's one of the important things that have evolved and have made their way into the more recent standards.
Yeah, I like that mission-driven approach. We do the same thing with data here, and having our programs aligned with the university's mission, so it just essentially it amplifies. It's an amplification of the mission of the schools. So Paula, you're the interim president of the National Black MBA Association, right? And so, and I assume, I'm former vice president of the National Association of Mathematicians, which would be the sister organization in the math side. So in what ways do you do programming with HBCUs, and as far as in the business, both undergraduate, graduate, and faculty? And then what new sort of partnerships would you like to have with HBCUs, not only for the association, but to be a true partner with HBCUs, let's say at a national scale?
Yeah, great question. So about, maybe 3 years ago or so, we did an HBCU Dean's Roundtable for the association. Should be. It's green. No. Mic check. It's
Here,
on,
try this
I
one.
think. How about now? Great. So about 3 years ago, we did an HBCU Dean's Roundtable for our association, brought in deans from various HBCUs to understand why HBCUs were not bringing droves of students to our annual conference and career fair like the PWI counterparts. So if you haven't heard about our career fair, it happens in the fall every year. It's actually going on, happening this week. Roughly 250 or so companies coming to look for Black talent in business. Again, PWIs were bringing droves of students, and unlike we didn't see as many HBCUs participating in that. And what we heard was that you all needed partnership from us. So allowing to sort of stand in the gap, if you will, as it relates to programming for careers, as well as in the academic area. So one of the programs that we started to do on a year-round basis is something that we've called an HBCU Career Crash Course. It happens virtually, either our corporate partners or our chapter presidents, or we ourselves would participate in everything from how to network, how to get a better results-based resume, so all the things that you need in order to prepare for the career fair, as well as, of course, for on-campus recruiting. So that's one way. Of course, the pandemic killed the other idea that we had, which was to come on campus to you show you the strength of the organization, as well as to provide programming not only for the students, but for the faculty and staff, so that you all could get a better sense of who we are as an association and how we can help. So what we have started to do since then, we still do that programming that I talked about. We have an HBCU cohort now that is going through more of a one-on-one learning for the students, so that they can get better acclimated to who we are as an association and be better prepared for this conference and career fair, be exposed to the wonderful scholarship opportunities and all of our corporate partners. So what we want is basically more of that, more of the partnership. If you tell me that there is a barrier to entry to get to our career fair, we want to work with you to figure out what that barrier is and how we can overcome it, whether it be funding through our corporate partners, learning for the students to be successful there, and then again, that year-round engagement is very important, because it's not just the once and done. It's not just the one-time career fair. We have a job board that's open throughout the year. So as students and alum are looking for opportunities, we want to make sure that we are partnering together so that your students and alum can be successful.
Great. So thank you for that. Yeah, it's always a challenge bridging those divides, especially when we've been in this interesting COVID climate. But I think there are some definite opportunities to form some stronger partnerships and relationships there. So
Yes.
exciting things to come. Fantastic. So Bob, so you said you've been working on these ranking factors just for a few years, right? Since 1987.
Understatement.
Who's counting? All right, just understatement. I think I was in 7th grade. But anyway,
I started, I had black hair when I started.
yeah, like I said, I was in 7th grade, so when you started, so you know. Okay, I might still be in middle school, but that's all good. So you said you were in charge of these rankings. So can you tell us a little bit more about these rankings? Can you break down like how they're calculated? How does it bring value to the institution? Not only as a mirror as to what the institution is doing or not doing in their program, but also as a outward reflection to the broader community, including potential students and potential business partners and the like, in forming relationships in that respect. So can you just break these rankings down a little bit for us?
Yeah, that's a very big question, and there's been dissertations written about that, in effect. But the rankings are, and you know, actually the main audience for the rankings is prospective students and their parents, because they're the main way the rankings are viewed is from our website, and it's a consumer website. But there's obviously an audience for the rankings for institutions, because we're impacting the image of the institutions, or the brand of an institution, or where an institution stands in the pecking order of other schools. It can impact the institution's ability to attract students or not attract students. The rankings can impact fundraising. I'm just talking about these are some of the uses of the rankings. I'm not saying that they're how any of the schools are sitting here are using the rankings, but obviously our U.S. News is a for-profit company, so since the rankings have started, I'm not saying these are innovations, but there's institutions can buy badges so they can promote their U.S. News ranking. They can use it as a way of branding their quality, depending how they feel about the ranking. There's also a relatively new offering, U.S. News does. I didn't mean to get into this commercial part of it, but the question was how it can impact an institution. And there's a product U.S. News has called Student Connect, which the schools can, this is basically for undergraduates, where a school can can link into U.S. News and get leads. It's a form of lead generation. There's other companies that are doing it. It's linked into Slate. It's more like an undergraduate lead generation. So there's definitely lots of ways that the rankings can be impactful. I think in terms of the rankings themselves, in terms of the particular HBCU universe, I would say there's 4 main rankings that U.S. News does that relate to HBCUs. One of them is the main HBCU ranking where a school has to be federally designated as an HBCU, and I think there's 77 HBCUs, and that the most recent ranking was published just a couple weeks ago on September 12th, actually 2 weeks ago today, and that methodology uses academic reputation and graduation and retention rates and indebtedness and measures of social mobility. So it uses the same methodology that to some degree, that we use in our overall ranking, but the HBCUs are compared to themselves. I will say, and this is another one of the questions, U.S. News collects our own data, so there's 77 HBCUs in the rankings. I think 21 of them didn't submit data. I'm only saying that because that can be an issue at some schools. Either they're not organized. If this comes as a surprise to the people in the audience, it would be surprising. But that some schools we don't want to participate in external surveys. Some schools don't find it a priority to participate in the U.S. News rankings, and other schools that's not one of their strong suits of having an institutional research department and doing surveys like that. But nevertheless, U.S. News has enough third-party data to actually create rankings for these schools, even if you don't fill in our survey, so you're going to be ranked anyway. Trying to sum this up, so because unlike when we first started doing the rankings, there's a lot of U.S. government data that's mandatory. Schools are required to fill in U.S. government data in order to qualify for Pell Grants. So there's a lot of now consumer-oriented data. It's called iPads. The other rankings, which are business rankings, we do an undergraduate business ranking, which is reputation only. I figured out that there's 23 AACSB accredited schools in our undergraduate business ranking, and so you actually have to be an AACSB accredited school to qualify. So there's actually a lot of HBCUs that are in that ranking, and that was published on September 12th. Then we have 2 business school rankings. We have a full-time MBA ranking, which there's 4 HBCUs in that. In order to be ranked in that ranking, the school has to fill out the statistical survey, and you have to fill in career data. So you have to keep track of your career data. That means where you. There's standards. There's NBA, CSEA standards that are used to keep track of where your graduates go and have a job at graduation in 3 months. And so there's 4 HBCUs that are ranked in that ranking. I'm willing to bet there's more than 4 HBCUs that have a full-time MBA program, but only 4 of them filled out the survey. We also, our full-time MBA ranking, which has 136 schools in it, by the way, the undergraduate business ranking has 520-ish schools in it. The full-time MBA ranking uses academic reputation, recruiter reputation, this career data and admission data like GMAT and GREs and undergrad GPA. Then we have a part-time MBA ranking, which is also, you have to have an AACSB accredited program to participate, and you also have to fill out our survey since it's based on statistics, and unlike the undergraduate data, there's no third-party data you can use as substitute. So there are 4 HBCUs that were ranked in the part-time MBA program. I know there's more than 4 of those 23 AACSB schools that have part-time MBA programs. These are just the facts, and that methodology is also based on a reputation. It's based on part-time MBA admission data, and it's based on a few other factors. So those are basically that's a brief summary of the ranking world. But that's only the very tip of the iceberg. But
We'll go read the dissertations. Okay. But just as an FYI, the top 4 full-time MBA programs are Howard University, North Carolina A&T, Morgan State, and then Clark Atlanta. For part-time MBA, if you didn't know, the top is Fayetteville State, Howard, Savannah State, Jackson State, and Prairie View A&M. So those are the top 5 for the part-time MBA. And then, as you said, there are 23 in the business. The top there is Howard, then Morehouse, Tuskegee, Delaware State, Morgan State, Clark Atlanta, Alabama A&M, and so on. And I think, to your point, Bob, that there are probably more HBCUs doing more, but they're not captured in the rankings. And so if we don't tell our story, third-party data will tell our story for us. So we might as well put it out there, do the work, work with our institutional research offices, which is not always the easiest thing to do. From personal experience, I get it, but it's got to be done. So we know what we're doing. We can tell our story and let people know all the great things that are happening at our institutions. So thank you for that insight. Really appreciate it. So Neil, thinking about accreditation and business, there are a lot of online programs that are starting to come out and emerge, both at the undergraduate level, graduate level, and somewhere in between and on the periphery. How do you think that this will change, or will it change how we think about accreditation? And what are you seeing with respect to this online education? How is it changing this business education landscape?
Well, certainly it's changing the landscape tremendously. There are a number of factors that are doing so, but what we're finding is that online programming, obviously mostly accelerated through the COVID period, is something that students are really looking for. They're looking for these opportunities where they don't have to travel and go to a campus, or maybe they can live at home and not have to live away from their families. As it relates to accreditation, the standards are the same, whether it's an online program, an online school, or whether it is a traditional school that a student would attend, and that is typically the number of faculty that have PhD terminal degrees is still required, whether it's online programming or not. And it's a little harder for the online schools to demonstrate the engagement of the PhDs in the program, in the curriculum development. But there are some that do that very, very well. And that is something that AACSB continues to work with and will continue to work with. Now, many of the traditional universities also have certain programs that are very specifically online and not offered in the majority of in a face-to-face environment in the traditional university. And so again, those same universities, you know, when AACSB accredits a business school, we actually accredit the whole university. And so even if there are business programs outside of the business school, those fall under the AACSB accreditation unless there is a very specific and justifiable reason to exclude it from accreditation. So in that case, sometimes institutions will take an online program, and maybe it's in the School of Engineering, but it's a business course. That has to demonstrate meeting the standards with AACSB as well. So I do think this is going to be a growing trend. I know that students are looking for flexibility, they're looking for opportunities, and AACSB is being agile to be able to meet those same needs.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting time, and we've learned a lot going through the pandemic on how we can do this thing called education. Paula, so you're at the interface working a lot, sounds like working a lot between students and industry and helping students upskill and meet the demands of what industry professionals are looking for people coming into jobs. So could you just enlighten us, what are the top skills that you think are most important for students coming into the workforce, into the business arena, that you'd like to see more of that may not be obvious to us?
Well, the communication, clearly, because you need to be able to communicate across all parts of the organization. But one of the biggest things was touched on earlier about just the real world practical experience that you can only get on a job training, if you will. And so, of course, if you're a student, it can be hard to work simultaneously. So what we have seen companies do really well are creating things like fellowship programs in addition to internships where you can learn while you're going to school. Perhaps you are, Marsh McLennan is one that comes to mind right now, where students who are current students, they're introducing them to case studies throughout the year, a 9-month journey, if you will, so that they learn the business concepts, they learn the culture. It is also like a 9-month interview, if you will, because they get to see the students in action, how they interact with their executives. And then on the flip side, the students get to see what it is really like to work for the company before having to make that commitment. So companies that are doing it well, like I said, give the students that opportunity to do so, whether it is through a fellowship program, an internship at an earlier stage. And so what I would love for universities to do is introduce the concept of career. What are your skills, motivations, abilities from a freshman year, so that you can get access to those opportunities after your freshman year, continue to grow, learn, so that by the time you are junior, senior, you graduate, or if you are first-year MBA, getting that skill simultaneously, so that by the time you get to the graduation point, you're able to have a more informed decision. When you come to things like career fairs, you can articulate your pitch much better, understand what your transferable skills are. So those would be the top of mind, again, communication and that just ability to experience. Oh, and one thing I'll add to that, if you cannot do it with a company, there are tons of case competitions around where students can still get that ability to analyze, understand what the issues are that are going on within organizations, analyze, interpret data, present that data to executives or professionals such as yourselves, just so that they can know what it's like to act under pressure, and that is another way that they can get that experience without having to work for a company.
Oh, I feel a partnership coming on around data challenge. Yeah, we're looking for another data challenge, so Paula, I'll be in touch with that. But yeah, so good. On this past Friday, we had our student data science symposium, and in prepping the lightning talk speakers, I told them, I said, you got to have your commercial slide. They said, what's my commercial slide? I said, you talk about yourself and how wonderful you are. They nailed it. But it never dawned on them that they should advocate for themselves, and that's something that we do. But stating those things in intentional ways as they go along their trajectory and go through the undergraduate experience, yeah, totally. Yeah, that's great. So Bob, so you said data just came out, and as they say, the truth is in the data, right? And as you know, one of our schools, one of our beloved partners, Columbia, was in the news recently for, having methods that were questionable. If you didn't read it, look it up, y'all. And so, can you just alleviate some folks' either fear or apprehension or maybe mistrust of the rankings? Because some people say, should students choose where to go to college based on what has become a proxy for prestige? This is from the New York Times. And then some people argue that they're troubled by the peer assessment, where there's a survey of school reputation that's sent out to presidents and deans. So can you kind of just address the apprehension of U.S. News, the rankings that you all provide, and the value, just address it head on? Because I think that some people, institutions may not be as, let's say, intentional in providing data, because they question the value of the data and how it's being assessed and how it's being ranked and how it's being judged.
Well, that's another non-softball question. No, it's okay. Yeah, at U.S. News, we're definitely aware of the criticism and the controversy that surrounds the rankings, and there's been criticism by presidents, maybe represented in this room, that the rankings aren't, that's the right way, that aren't necessarily geared to HBCUs or minority serving institutions, and you're automatically not performing as well as other schools. And those are definitely criticisms that we're aware of. I would say that there's a number of different issues. I think broadly speaking, the data that schools submit is submitted with, that they've done a serious job of tallying their information and filling out the surveys, and it's in a small minority, even though the Columbia case is highly visible. There definitely are some highly visible cases of either misreporting, that they're one-off on misreporting, or they've been, they haven't taken it seriously, or they've on purpose, fudge the numbers, but I think that's a minority of the cases. However, it does happen, and I'm not sure. U.S. News doesn't audit the data. I think that would be impossible, because the federal government doesn't audit the data that's submitted to iPads. So we are trusting the schools to report accurate data to us. In terms of the actual rankings themselves, I'm not really sure. I don't really have an easy. I don't really have a great answer for, do I think I can give an answer to this audience that's going to, say something in a way that the HBCUs are going to want to participate in our ranking? I'm not sure that's possible, that I can do that. I think it's, I think there's a certain number of HBCUs that rank near the top of our HBCU ranking, and they think it's in their best interest to keep on reporting the data. I think the other schools, their statistical profile isn't as high, and they may be saying to themselves, it's not worth reporting the data because we're not going to rank highly, and we're better off not playing the game. I really haven't talked to anybody. I mean, this is my guesstimate of what people are thinking. They would rank higher if they submitted the data. that's a different issue with whether they think that our ranking is actually measuring something worthwhile in relation to their institution, or whether our ranking is capturing the full nature of all parts of their school. And of course, our ranking or any of these rankings isn't capturing all the aspects of an organization. The rankings, based on the indicators that the ranker has chosen, in this case U.S. News, that are the most important, and more likely like any ranker, we're captive by the data that's available. Where the data that's available and the data that we think is the most accurate or most comparable is the data that any ranker, U.S. News among them, chooses as our indicators, and it definitely doesn't cover all parts of an institution, and it's probably more so among HBCUs, and that there's that you're doing a lot of things that aren't measured by any data, and that's not being picked up in the rankings. I'm not sure how that can be measured. I guess that would be a challenge of U.S. News needs to probably reach out to HBCUs more and try to figure out to work with the schools about how to maybe establish new paradigms of measurement, but that's also a big task. So those are some of my thoughts.
That's good, thinking about ways we can actually expand our story with our data, and what sort of data is not being captured that could be captured that would tell our work in a more genuine way, right? A more full way, not genuine, but full way. So I'm hoping you all are thinking about questions you want to ask our panelists. So I'm going to plant that seed. So think about a question. But Neil, would you like to respond also?
Yeah, not necessarily respond, but just add to the conversation just for a moment. So the rankings have their value, right? And it's certainly a perceived value based on the user as to where it contributes to their decision making on what institution they'd like to attend. What AACSB also has to supplement that is we have a database where we also survey our member schools, whether you are accredited or non-accredited. Most of our accredited schools actually do participate in our survey. We have about 950 plus accredited institutions, and about 95% of those institutions respond to our surveys. And our surveys are more about the demographics of the school, the type of programs that the school offers, the type of financial capabilities the school has, what other amenities on the campus does the school offer. And these are the types of things that a student should also take into account in addition to the rankings when they are making a choice as to what institution fits their need. You do have to be a member to participate, but it does give you an opportunity then to not only be part of the benchmarking that the data is also used for, but it does give students an opportunity to look at what you showcase about your institution. And I know that for HBCUs, sometimes it's a challenge to be able to highlight and showcase the really good things that an HBCU does. And somehow we collectively really need to do something to overcome that. And hopefully, both by using rankings and using AACSB data, people can see the value of that and hopefully make the choices to attend HBCUs when it's appropriate for them.
Do we have any questions from the audience? I know y'all have questions. I'm just going to walk around. All right, I'm coming. Okay, introduce yourself and then ask your question, please. And if you wouldn't mind standing with me.
Donald Andrews, Dean, College of Business, Southern University of Baton Rouge. I want to give Bob a softball question. It seems like he's been on the defense, and I want to give him a question he probably won't have difficulty responding to. I know you probably send this information to institutional research or whoever, but I think it might be appropriate to send some of this information down to the college deans who might be more interested in making sure that this information gets done, because sometimes at the high level of the administration, they're working on many projects and programs, and sometimes things may just fall off the desk or whatever. So you have any way of making sure, especially for business schools, if that information gets down to the dean level?
Well, on the undergraduate business rankings, they're based on sending surveys to the deans and the associate deans, so that's reputation. I think we could probably, on the MBA surveys and the part-time MBA, it's the same statistical survey. We usually send it to the dean's office, but I think if any of the deans in this audience want to have this, discuss, to redesignate the statistical survey to their office, we can do that. I mean, we're leaving it up to each school, in this case, each business school, where they want to, which office at the school should be responsible for filling out or not filling out the statistical survey. This is of the MBA. On the overall best colleges survey, we usually start off with the institutional research office, because they're usually the central depository for the school's data, or have the ability to coordinate a survey that asks for questions that touch a number of parts of the campus. But we're definitely willing to work with business school deans to designate the most effective person to fill out the survey, so it gets filled out.
Yeah, I think to your point, institutional data collection, we could have a distributed model at HBCUs, and it's not necessarily in the Office of Research, right? The institutional research, and so there's a little bit of a calling on the folks in this room to be proactive and reach out and make sure that you're getting the information so you can submit it. Right?
Our school was ranked 36 in one survey, and our board of supervisors were upset about it. And all of a sudden, we went up 20 points in 1 year because people actually reported the data.
Yeah, so it's not incumbent just on the office. It takes a distributed model to make sure that we're collecting the information and providing it in a timely fashion. Yeah. Definitely.
All right, good afternoon again. Van Sapp, Dean, St. Augustine's University. Just a comment, and then I'll ask you to reflect on it. Two parts. Running track, if there's a strong wind at your back and you run a great race, you're not going to get the record because it was wind aided, right? So there was some inertia helping you at your back. And a lot of HBCUs, have run into headwinds, not had that tailwind behind you. So for us, as we look at some of these rankings, the same race is a little tougher. And I get it, it's tough for the rankings to have that. The other piece I'd like to just throw out, I know Neil's got a big lunch for a few of us, because most of the HBCUs are ACBSP accredited, right? And you've got two accreditation agencies, much like institutions, that people choose one or the other for different reasons. And as a lot of your programs and rankings are based on AA, right, you leave out a whole lot of HBCUs because they're at the other accreditation agency for whatever their reasons are. So just throw those two things out for reflection.
Well, I mean, you're right in the sense that the overall ranking that we do, which takes into account graduation and retention rates and has admission data and and resources and academic reputation when in many cases the HBCUs don't fare as well on those indicators. So I'm not sure how because basically we haven't handicapped. I'm not sure that's not the right word, but you are where when all the schools are lumped together, we're comparing the schools on the same indicators. That's true, and however, that's why at least it's one reason why we thought we should pull out the HBCU ranking by itself, because it's, at least from what we understand, and you know, that there's many, and maybe it's even growing, that there is a large number of students who are just interested in looking at HBCUs, and they want to see how the HBCUs compare themselves to each other. As I said, I'm not sure what other information there's actually available that, you know, that's standardized higher education information that we could actually use. I'm not trying to be closed-minded. I'm just saying that it's limited.
I'll just add a few comments about the various accreditors. So being accredited by ACBSP does not preclude an institution from applying for AACSB accreditation as well. The most significant differences, as I see it and as my colleagues see it, is that ACBSP has more of a focus on teaching and accrediting the teaching capability of the institution, whereas AACSB has a combination both of teaching, but very much so tied to research and having terminal degree qualified faculty members. And so what we believe is that doing research and taking that research and bringing that to the students does add value to the student and to the educational process, and so that is why we focus more on that dimension to it. But again, an institution can be accredited by both if they choose to, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that if I need to clarify anything.
Maybe that's something that U.S. News needs to look at about including schools from the other accrediting agency. We haven't done that, but there are AACSB has had a pretty big increase in the number of accredited schools since we started the process of basing the ranking on AACSB accreditation. I need to become more of an expert on them, or increase my understanding on the differences.
We're all devising plans on how we can bootstrap up our data collection methods and evaluation so we can submit them, right? And you also have a question?
Yes.
Stand up, please. Say your name and then say institution.
Tarek Tidwell here with VentureWell. I think I have like 2 or 3 questions, and it goes probably between all 2 or 3 questions. Do I start again? Tarek Tidwell from VentureWell. I'm looking here at the methodology. I'm curious about a few factors, which is, you know, some as relates to reputation management for some of the recruiting partners. I'm curious if it's something based upon the school's recruiting partners and their own, or is it something that goes very generic out to the entire landscape of corporations that may or may not be engaged with those HBCUs or institutions?
In terms of the MBA recruiter
Yes.
survey, the way we do it is we ask each school to give us 10 names of either corporate recruiters or corporate contacts who come to their school to hire graduates, and then that's So when we take all those names, and it's upwards of like 2,000 or 3,000 names, and those, that entire universe of names is surveyed on all the schools. So you're right that in some cases recruiters are getting surveys, but they may have only visited, you know, a small percent of the names on the survey, but each school has a chance to submit 10 names, and all the names that are submitted are surveyed.
Paula, can you just provide comments on how your organization can help amplify the brand of the business schools at HBCUs and actually contribute to the enhancement of the reputation?
The biggest way of amplifying the brand would be, so the programming that I talked about, reaching out to HBCU alum programs to provide that programming because it is broadcasted on a national level. So that is one piece of exposure. But then also when we've talked about going to the campuses in particular, or as we are having conversations with corporate partners about where they can find Black talent. Can't tell you how many times certain companies have come to us and say, oh, we don't know where the Black people are. Where's the Black talent? I don't know. Maybe there's historically Black colleges and universities where you could find that talent, and they've been around for hundreds of years. So just as we're having those conversations, enlightening those partners, the past couple years, we have seen that need for enlightenment, the willingness. So we are having conversations about where we can find that talent again. So that is what we've committed to do as an organization, making sure that our partners know where you all are, know the importance of you, and are coming there to recruit your students.
And it sounds bi-directional that we also come to you and tell us all the wonderful things that we're doing so you can amplify it on a national, international scale.
That's exactly right. A great partnership is what that would be.
Fantastic. I've given encouragement, bi-directional. All right.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? Okay. Good morning. My name is Monica Sadiq. I'm a senior business administration major, concentration international business management, and a minor in Spanish. Thank you all for having me. And I just had a question for all the panelists. Like you were saying, Ms. Fountain, about how companies do come and look for talent that is diversified so that they can do better growth-wise in the upcoming futures. How would you say that employers or companies take into account the ranks? I heard throughout the discussion it can be iffy, especially with HBCUs and PWIs, whether people are being honest with their statistics and their data and things like that. So let's say, for example, not to bash any HBCU, but if Howard is ranked number 1 and Clark Atlanta is ranked 45, but we're around equal, if a student was to come and look for themselves, or even an employer was to come and compare those two students, how imperative is that for a company in choosing a student?
That is an amazing question. So there are certain companies, and I might even say certain industries, where rankings are critically important. An example would be investment banking, for example. Consulting. Right, and consulting. Absolutely is another one where they are looking for the higher ranked programs in order to go on campus to recruit that talent. So that would be one of the reasons, or the incentives, if you will, for you all to fill out that data so that you can tell your own story, as somebody said before. A way to get around that, though, sometimes is through networking. So they may not go necessarily to that school to recruit, but let's say if it was the National Black MBA Association Career Fair, for example, if you were networking through friends, family, those type of things, then they have a reason to want to sell you internally and go after you a little bit harder of, the rough side of the mountain, if you will. But the rankings are, like I said, important to certain industries, and a way to get around that are diversity career fairs so that you can get the exposure that you need.
I'm not, I think you're an expert in this, and I'm not really sure. I've heard anecdotally along the lines of what the previous speaker said, that, you know, at some companies, the rankings matter, other companies, they don't. I know I'm going to talk about U.S. News, not because I've been there, as I said, since 1976, and I think what I'm going to say now is somewhat a relatively new happening at many companies, and I do not know how this translates into the student level or new graduates. So U.S. News, since the Black Lives Matter and those protests started a very, of course we're not a big company, but a DEI, you know, very trying to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion in many parts of the company, and primarily in hiring and trying to reach out. I'm not saying U.S. News can offer you a job. I'm saying you know, maybe I know a lot of companies are starting these DEI activities, either because maybe U.S. News is doing it because they want to change our image, but they're doing it for, you know, it's having a positive outcome. So you know, maybe all these DEI activities that companies are starting are going to change the nature of how hiring is done, or at least open doors that weren't open before. I'm not sure how to find those open doors, but I know at least at U.S. News they're reaching out to other places when they have job openings than they used to before.
And as we say here at Clark Atlanta, I'll find a way or make one. So we just make it happen.
Good morning. I'm Regina Butts, and I bring you greetings from Fort Valley State University, Department of Business. As we talk about the future of business education, we think about the buzzwords of design thinking, micro-credentialing, growth mindset, and collaborative partnership. What would you say would be the best, or how would we combine all of those buzzwords to produce tomorrow's business executive that would be highly sought after by any firm?
Well, one of the sources that I can maybe direct you and the group to is earlier this year, AACSB issued a comprehensive thought leadership report called the 5 Forces for the Future of Business Education. And within that, there are a number of themes that have been provided that encourage these themes and provide some resources within that to encourage institutions to be able to adopt and to adjust their curriculum. You can find that on the aacsb.edu website. It's available to anyone who wants to take a look at that report. What's interesting, I guess I would say, is, you know, thinking about enrollments, which isn't exactly to your question, but something that I've been thinking about and hopefully had an opportunity to share here, is, you know, someone earlier mentioned decline in enrollments, and that is the case in higher education more broadly. But what we're finding is for business schools and business education, there actually is an increase in enrollments over the last 5 years across the landscape. Now, of course, individual institutions may have different experiences there. But the undergraduate degrees have increased, MBA programs have increased, and again, I'm referring to some of the earlier comments that were made. Finance is still very, very strong, management is very strong, marketing is very strong. The one place that we see a bit of decline, and sorry to some of the colleagues I spoke with this morning, is in accounting. And I think there are things that institutions can do in the accounting curriculum that can really turn that around and make accounting very interesting again. I think it's probably an image issue and a branding issue, but I do think that if AACSB, we are beginning to look at that more carefully, are going to provide resources to our members, and in many cases non-members, we put things out publicly. I think that that might help, but data sciences, data analytics, I mean, these are things that have to be infused in the accounting curriculum. It can't just be a textbook sort of view of accounting, because otherwise people think all it is people are going to graduate crunch numbers and be the police and do the auditing and all of that. And it's much, much more than that. I think an accounting degree can really be a platform for an individual to move very quickly through an organization, because now you not only have the financial experience, but if you have managerial acumen, you can take all of that with you in through your career. So if there's any tip I can give to the HBCUs to maybe help lead in that area, is think about your accounting programs and try to get them to infuse practice, analytics, and ways to understand the business and not be only about debits and credits.
And if I could add to that, when I was talking earlier about the case competitions, having that design thinking in as many of the courses as you possibly can, and then partnering with corporations or people at corporations to have things like capstone projects, so that the students can understand what, how to translate what they've learned in the books to the real world business experiences, and then again giving your corporate sponsors a tease, if you will, into the talent that is at your institutions.
I just wanted to highlight the data analytics part. Here at the Atlanta University Center Data Science Initiative, one of our top majors that we engage with is business, but our business faculty are not in the top 10. So our students who are majoring in business, all the different the facets of business, are coming to us saying, I want to do data analytics, I want to have more analytics experience, I want to have more database, data-driven, real-world experiences. So I just have to echo that students are looking for that. I don't know what they see when they get into a business department, if they actually see that they can handle real-world data, that they're actually doing some programming in data that's valuable, and that will actually provide some solutions. And also just one shameless plug, if I may. We were here at Clark Atlanta, we were just awarded a $10 million grant to establish a National Data Science Alliance. And one of the avenues of that is to really work across all HBCUs with respect to data science. And the way we see it is that data science cuts across all disciplines, because all disciplines now are collecting data and they're using it for something, whether it's in the lab, whether it's in a business decision, or so on. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. But it doesn't matter, because I'm going to get your information anyway and pull you in. But the use of technology, the use of analytics, real-world cases, programming, you know, and what we've done here is we've offered a slate of workshops to help faculty along their trajectory to upskill in these new technology areas that just weren't available to us way back in grad school or while we were in school. And so that continuing education. So the National Data Science Alliance will also provide a resource for HBCU faculty to engage in data science and to upskill and develop new innovations. So just sorry about that shameless plug.
Talitha, I'm just going to add to that real quick. I apologize for interrupting there, but when your school goes through its next continuous improvement review process with AACSB, it would be really good to highlight those things, because we do collect best practices as part of the review process, and we put that in our database, and we share that with people. In fact, we're spending a lot of time and funding on building our database out, which again will provide information back to our members, and these will be really good opportunities to highlight the great things that HBCUs do.
Yeah, we should talk, yeah, great.
Thank you. James Harris from Core Ventures. Has there been any conversation amongst the leadership of HBCUs, particularly business education, to do your own rankings? As you talk about collecting this data, I have two daughters. One recently graduated from Agnes Scott, and one is a sophomore at Tulane. And their legacy at Clark, Spelman, Savannah State, and Albany State. And one of the things they struggled with is really thinking through differentiation amongst HBCUs and what you specialize in. I'm excited to hear that Morris Brown has a esports degree. Exciting. I had no idea. And so the question is, have you thought about ranking yourselves and sharing that information?
You want me to answer that? So yes, you want to tell your story. Yes, you want to collect your data. Yes, you want to have your brand and how that aligns also with the university's mission and where the university wants to go, because it all has to be connected. And you also want other people to talk about you, the external rankings, the external accrediting bodies, the external national associations. So you want to create, so yes, we do tell our story, and we also probably, you know, technology is changing. How we brand ourselves is changing. What people are looking for is changing, not only incoming students, but potential partners and the different dynamics. And we've kind of been thrown into this COVID whirlwind as far as how are we thinking about doing education, how are we going to prepare our students to enter into the workforce. Because let's be frank, some of our students, they were in virtual learning for a few years, and so we're working really hard to develop those communication skills that you eloquently said are most needed. So there's a lot of challenges that lie before us, but there's a lot of, I think, neat new ways to innovate. The esports program at Morris Brown, and how can we infuse that? And then thinking about technology, thinking about programming, thinking about really solving some of these business problems from a diverse perspective and the value that we bring. Sometimes we're so much into our own hole, into our own work, we forget to see the value of the fruits of our labor. And so we just need to remind ourselves that of the fruits of our labor, and that it is worthwhile, and that what we do does matter and does contribute to the best practices. Even the stuff we take for granted every day, like brushing our teeth, right? A lot of things we do here, it is like brushing our teeth, but it's something good to do. It is something we should share. So I think there's a challenge in the room amongst all of us, including myself, to make sure that we are telling our story, that we are messaging our brand, and that we are saying who we are and what we bring, not only to the value of business education, but also to the business workplace and beyond.
Well, I think we're at the end, and I want to thank our fantastic moderator, Dr. Washington, from the AUC Data Center, and our great panelists, Neil Boslin from AACSB International, Paula Fountain from the National Black MBA Association, and I know you're busy with this week coming towards the end of the week, and Bob Morris. You're going to get Clark Atlanta up to #1 in U.S. News and World Report. So thank you, the panel. Let's give them a welcome round of applause. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the noon hour. They're going to get set up for the luncheon that's going to take place at 12:30. And I didn't like the applause we gave that panel. I think they should get some more applause. And let me apologize to our representative from Fort Valley. I didn't recognize you were there, but thank you so much for coming and sharing in this L45 Summit. 1945. And I think back, that was very close to my birth date. So we're just tremendously proud that Clark Atlanta can now, in 2022, look forward to what our ancestors did back in 1945. I think this first panel has gotten us off to a great start. So again, thank you so much for your participation.